Hi everybody, welcome to the intro to video part of Max, and I'm going to show you how to play videos inside of Max, how to program them and manipulate them, and then we will after this connect our video and our audio modules, and we're then going to connect that to Arduino. So let's just start off with where to begin. The first thing that we need in order to start a movie is we're going to be using objects called JIT. JIT.movie and JIT.world. I'm going to explain to you what they do in just a moment, but the simplest way to begin a movie is to create a toggle. Let's unlock our patch. Create a toggle, and let's just build it right here. Toggle. We're going to create an object called JIT.world. Oops. Then we're going to name it my world, or whatever you want to name it. You can name it. And this will result in a window that will appear, as you see here. We don't need this just yet, but it creates a window where all the videos will sort of live and sort of exist. The reason why we use JIT.world is because there's different ways you can do this, but JIT.world is just a slightly a newer version of how to work with video. Max has notoriously had it wasn't really intentionally and initially made for video. It was made by musicians. And jitter objects are just one part of Max. Like MSP is the sound part of Max, and Max is like the interface part of it, I think. But the jitter part, that has always been a little bit difficult for playback on Max. Like Max will crash if there's too many videos playing, or there's too much information kind of coming through the JIT objects, which makes it a little bit finicky. Like Max will be a little bit finicky. And in the years before JIT.world, we would use JIT.movie, and we would export it to an object like this, which is called a JIT.p window, which is great. It works, but it kind of is a little bit slow and a little bit clunky. So one way to handle videos is to use JIT.world. This is sort of a little bit more up-to-date version of how to do that. And rather than sort of coming out here into the finished presentation mode of Max, it creates its own window, and then everything kind of happens in that window, and that's just where it'll live. You can make this really big, and that's just where the things happen. And that's cool. That's like totally fine if that's what you want to do. And let's go ahead and work through this part of it. So in order to play a movie in JIT.world, we still need a JIT.movie object. So let's go ahead and press N. Oh, you know what? Let's do something different. In order to call up the JIT objects, you don't even have to press N. The quick way to do it is to pull up or press the letter J on your keyboard, and then all of these JIT objects appear. Literally all of them. And these are all of the controls that you can use to create videos. All the objects that you can use to work with videos. You can literally go through here, click them, and then click on the help button, and it will give you a tutorial basically on how it works, and you can just copy and paste that code into your patcher. We're going to go over a couple of different things that you can use, but let's just continue on with our JIT.movie. So that's for you to sort of mess around with if you feel so inclined. All right, so we've connected our JIT.movie to our JIT.world, and we're going to come over here to the left, and we're going to go to the video section, and we're going to look at these videos. We're going to play background. if you notice that I'm hovering over it, at the very bottom of this gray rectangle, it gives you the information of the video, the name of it and where it is located. So background.mov, we don't need to know where it's located, but we just need to know if it's an MOV file or an MP4 or what have you, because some of them are different, right? And that's going to happen when we create our patchers, is that we're going to have videos of different kinds. So we're going to use background MOV, and we're going to make it a message, and we want it to read background MOV. So we're going to press M, and then we're just going to type read background. We don't have to import this information into Max because it's already built-in. Okay, so we've got read MOV. Let's pull up our jit.p window. No. .p window. And this is really handy because it essentially creates a little window that you can have in your patcher to sort of see what is happening, like what movies are playing. You can also control click this and add it to your presentation if you want to, and then this could be the window that exists in your presentation of what's playing. We need a start message for it to begin to play, and it needs a message stop, so it knows to start and stop. Oh man, I hate when that happens. I like my wires to either be a little bit round or sort of a little bit more linear like this. So that just makes me feel a little bit better. Did I read background.mov? Yeah, this should work. So let's see. Oh, you know what we need? So silly. We need a metro. So let's go ahead and create our metro object. 40. Oh no, not here. I'm so sorry. There we go. Let's just try it again. There we go. It's a little finicky, and that is part of Max, right? It's just going to be like that. So if something isn't quite working, you're like, it should totally work. Just turn it off and turn it back on, essentially, and see if that helps. So one thing I didn't mention, I didn't have it here, is that JIT movie needs a metro, like a metronome, like 40. It essentially needs constant inputs, like impulses, to be put in so that it knows to run. Movies generally run like 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second, or if you're doing slow-mo, it's like 60 frames per second. So Metro, though we're not doing like 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second, it's sending 40, so it's essentially sending impulses every 40 milliseconds. So it's just like asking it to continually read, to continually play. But let's look at JIT movie and just look at help and see what it does. See what we find. So if you notice here that you can read, you can start, you can dispose, you can do a lot of, you can have a lot of inputs into JIT movie. And one thing you notice here, that this JIT movie has an output texture. This is incredibly important when we are playing movies, because another part of, like I was mentioning earlier actually, that Max has trouble reading movies because it just has, they're big files sometimes. And so if you have output texture here, it'll make playback efficient. So it'll be really helpful. So it doesn't crash or what have you. So let's go ahead and put that in there. output texture, put texture as an attribute. Oh my god, this is gonna be nice. All right. I don't know if you notice, but in my eyes, I am seeing it sharper. It's actually a sharper image. So what output texture does is that it creates, it essentially sends all of this information to your GPU rather than your CPU. And we can get into like the technicality of it. Essentially what it's doing, it's mapping the texture and it's helping to store and place the texture and make it play, or use the graphic cards essentially in your, in the ways in which it's rendering these images or playing them back. It's using the graphic cards to sort of like help with its playback. I am by no means a computer expert, so this is just like what I've read, so I'm probably being incredibly confusing. But anyway, I am just gonna highly recommend that you put output texture next to your JIT movie. Otherwise, your movie playback is going to be slow and it's going to crash if you have too many movies. Okay, I've said that a bunch of times. So we're going to create a random movie player. How do we do that? Well, we're pretty used to our randoms, our metros, and our U menus. All of these are the exact same thing, including our prepend read. We're using the same setup, except we're going to be plugging into a JIT movie. And again, we have to put JIT movie with an output texture so that our playback will just be a little bit less cumbersome. Great. Okay, so essentially what I did is I deleted the information that you were seeing there, which was a matrix and a GL object. And we're not going to get into that just yet because it's not it's helpful, but it isn't the most necessary. It was essentially doing what this output texture is asking this JIT movie to do, which is create a texture so that your playback will be better. So let's go ahead and just kind of go over what this does. So like I had mentioned earlier, we need a Metro 40 for our JIT movies, or at least a low number Metro so that it can send a lot of bangs, regulated bangs for a JIT movie to play. We've got our Metro set to 3 seconds. That will every 3 seconds change, or at least generate a random number to play from our U menu that has 3 videos to play from. So, and then our U menu will then go through prepend read, because JIT movie needs a read button, a read message before we can play this file. Just like here, we need a read message before the file name in order to play the JIT movie. So let's just go ahead and click it, and got a bunch of different videos that will play. Seems like it really loves this chicken one, and I guess that's fine. Okay. I've added a stop here because if you notice, I guess let's just go back to blading. Okay, let's stop here. If you notice, the sound is still playing even though I've stopped this video. That is, and I have no idea why that happens, but it just does. In order to stop it, you just create a stop message and just make sure that it exists somewhere where you can trigger it, so that it will stop the audio, because it can be annoying when you've stopped your patch and all of a sudden the sound is still coming from somewhere and you're like, where is this emanating from? Okay, so this is all pretty standard. We've been doing this for a little while now, so we have a general idea as to how this works, creating random videos. Now we're going to move over to adding attributes and a couple different JIT objects that will change the hue and will change the brightness, contrast, and saturation. B for brightness, I don't know what R and C are for, but you know, saturation and contrast. C for contrast. So BR brightness, CO contrast, SA saturation. It took me a while to understand what that meant. Okay, so we have these objects that we're familiar with, which is our toggle, our Metro 40, our JIT movie with our at output texture, and we've got our file. The toggle will send a signal to the read to then read this, this MOV that will then send it to the movie, the JIT movie object. And then from here, this is when it gets a little different. It gets sent down to this object called JIT hue. Let's take a look at it. Essentially, it's an object that will change the hue of your image. So it'll add, you can add tints to your video. Performs hue rotation, preserving the luminance values. So it won't change the whiteness and the brightness of your video, but it will change, the color. So this is turning more. The higher you go, the more, it goes from green, blue to purple to green again. If you're gonna use JIT hue, you cannot use this. You essentially can. Let's go ahead and let's unlock our patcher, add a JIT P window, .p window, so we can just see what it does. Okay, so our hue angle is changing the hue of the one on the right because that's what it's connected to. They interfere with each other, so they can't be connected to the same P window, and that's totally fine. But let's say that we want to have, we want to fade two videos in and out of each other. We can definitely do that by using this object right here. It's called JIT X fade. Let's move these over here a little bit further and see if we can have multiple videos fading into each other. Let's go ahead and control click and open JIT fade help. Okay, well this seems pretty easy. Seems like one video file is going in here, another video file is going in here, and if we move it up, they're sort of fading into each other, but maybe let's try it with a different file. Okay. Oh, but it's changing the alpha channel too, it seems like. So the higher it goes up, the more it turns one into a negative, and the other one just becomes also negative. It's kind of interesting. Well, this is one that we can do. So let's go ahead and open up the patcher, and let's go ahead and copy paste this into our patcher. We don't want to use these source files. I'm going to show you how to do a different version of this, which is similar, but we're going to use jit.play. Let's take the chickens. I happen to really like the chickens. And it'll create an object like this. It's a media player. So let's take this and remove it, and take this and remove it. And we're going to put it into one side. And let's just take another video from our selection, that's our pre-selects essentially. Okay, let's see if this does the same thing. So it basically does the same thing. What are these objects? They're like media players, but they are kind of like an older program, so they don't really play that well. So we can use these, we can use these media players And the way that we call them up is jit dot player or playlist. We can do playlist here. Okay, so we can drag and drop videos onto our page and have these ready-made JIT players essentially play them for us. And that is definitely a way in which we can do that. It's a little cumbersome because you have to create an output texture and then create a matrix and whatnot. And it's going to be it's going to be really hard if you have a lot of information going into your Max program. You can definitely get away with it if you only have like 1 or 2 videos and they're not like in 4K or in HD. They will do really great if they are in SD. So that's like 480/320 or even 720p or whatever. And I can give you a list of the file types that this will take well if you're using this. But if you're using JIT at output texture, you're going to do great, like no matter what the video is, it'll be okay. So you can have 2 read, MOV files or 2 U menus that have videos already embedded in them and connect them to the JIT fade. And that's pretty fun. So you can sort of move these 2 things around. Or at least you can move 2 videos into each other. JIT grab is helpful if you want to use if your computer has a camera connected to it. If it does, then you can actually grab its signal so that you can mess around with that video. So let's go ahead and control click and go to JIT help, jit.grab help, and find out how to do this. So it digitizes video from an external source, so it doesn't have to be just your camera on your computer, but it can be from a camera that you connect to your computer. So that's cool. You can close it or open it. It takes those informations just like any other JIT object. And here it will tell you, or when you press it, it should tell you what objects are available. Generate a list. A list of all of the things that are available for you to pull from. This is literally the only thing that is available for you to pull from. You get to see me in bed. And so that's cool.